So here's a briefing on the freezing rain potential for our northwest counties. These are areas generally well north and west of the greater Houston area. We do have cold air in place now. I'll show you the latest temperature map in a moment. It's already below freezing near and northwest of a line from Crockett to Madisonville to Bryan to Summerville. We'll have spotty, light freezing rain in these areas today, continuing off and on tonight into Wednesday. And tonight and Wednesday, that freezing line will probably shift a little bit further south and east. Also, the precipitation will likely be a bit heavier tonight, at least in a band over those northwest counties. So some concern for icing even today, far northwest. And then over a slightly larger area tonight and Wednesday morning. We do have winter storm warnings issued for the areas of greatest concern, and I'll show you the map of the warnings and advisories in a moment. There is also a winter weather advisory for counties sort of on the fringe. These are counties where that temperature will probably hover right around freezing, either on either side of 32 degrees. And impacts there will depend on the temperature being above or below freezing, obviously. So those advisory counties are a bit more uncertain whether there will be any impacts at all, but certainly there will be icing if we do get at or below freezing. The main impacts we're concerned about: icy patches on elevated surfaces, especially in the warned area. That's our higher confidence area. But there is some possibility in the advisory area as well, depending on the temperature. Here's a map showing, as of 9 a.m., the temperatures around the area. And you can see right there in Bryan, we're already below freezing, up to Crockett, 32. You see some 32s, 29 there in Bryan, and Hearne as well. 30 in Caldwell. You get the picture there. Brenham just above at 34, but that freezing line is right into our northwest counties now, and the radar overlay shows some of that light freezing rain in those areas. So we are seeing some icing already going on there. Take a look further northwest out toward Killeen and Cedar Park up toward and further, and you can see some heavier precip and even colder temperatures. Look at those temperatures there, Fort Hood 26. So there's significant icing going on out there, and I'll show you the TxDOT map in a moment. In fact, here it is, drivetexas.org, showing where there's already icy roads, and look out toward Waco and Troy down to Round Rock, a lot of ice-covered roads already. If you look closer to our area, Bryan, Madisonville, not seeing many road impacts yet, maybe some out toward Hearne. So, we would expect to see the ice impacts expand into our area during the day and especially tonight. But notice how, once you get into the upper 20s, 30 degrees with precipitation, that's when you really start to see things ice up typically. As far as additional freezing rain, here's the forecast from the Weather Prediction Center and Weather Service. You can see the light yellow indicates up to 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain. The orange shading there between 1/10 and 1/4, and then the red we start to be looking at 1/4 inch. So you can see 1/4 inch perhaps in Bryan, certainly Burleson County, western Madison County, and then 1/10 to 1/4 a little bit southeast of that. Notice that yellow shading sort of ticking northwest Waller, and also, of course, western Houston County. So that shows again how our area really on the fringe of the really heavier stuff, which will include Austin, San Antonio, Waco, Dallas, over to San Angelo. A very significant ice storm there, but certainly some icing potential here as well. Here's a look at our warnings and advisories. Those counties in pink are in a warning. That's where we have the highest confidence of icing even today, and then continuing tonight and tomorrow morning. The counties in purple are in an advisory. For those counties, it's a bit more conditional. Will we get below freezing or not? But certainly at least patches of ice potentially there. And as we showed on the earlier maps, for a county like Houston County, the conditions are going to be more severe, likely in the northwestern part of Houston County. So it really is going to be a sharp cutoff between icing and perhaps significant icing and no impacts at all. So those advisory counties are more uncertain, but we're certainly going to be right around freezing in those counties as well. This map is intended to show impacts. In yellow there, some minor impacts, patches of ice. It doesn't take much ice, of course, to create a problem. So, and then more moderate impacts in the orange areas. A heavier buildup of ice. And as I showed in this map here, we could even get some trace ice amounts even southeast of where you see the yellow stripe there, perhaps into northwest Waller County, northwest Montgomery, and so on. But this gives you, again, the idea that the concern of icing is greater as you go further northwest. And did want to mention as well, Weather Prediction Center does have us in a marginal to slight risk of flash flooding tomorrow, depending on how heavy the rain is, and given the fact that we've had recent rains, the additional rainfall tomorrow could lead to some flash flooding. So even though we're not expecting any icing, for example, in Harris County, up through eastern Conroe, Liberty, and so on, the additional rain could at least give us some street flooding issues and perhaps some localized flash flooding. Did want to show this too. This is based on some model data, the probability of seeing greater than 1/4 inch of ice. For that level of icing, we start to be concerned about power outages, for example, and infrastructure impacts. And you can see, again, Dallas, Fort Worth, down to Waco, Killeen, on to the west towards San Angelo. Very high likelihood of seeing this level of icing for those areas. But when you consider our counties, including Bryan College Station up to Crockett, we're on that fringe. So we have for example, looking at this map for Bryan, we have about a 20 to 30% chance of seeing greater than 1/4 inch of ice, but much greater chances as you go further west, even into western Burleson County. But a significant ice storm is likely even further to the northwest. So just to sum up, we already have sub-freezing conditions in our northwest counties, already below freezing, near and northwest of a Crockett to Madisonville to Bryan to Somerville line. And that's probably not going to move much today, that freezing line, and then it will shift toward the southeast tonight to include a larger area. Spotty light freezing rain in these areas today, continuing off and on tonight into Wednesday, and there may be a band of heavier precipitation in those northwest counties tonight and Wednesday, which would lead to a greater icy buildup. Winter storm warnings have been issued for areas where the greatest icing impacts are expected. I showed you that warning map a moment ago. There we expect the greatest ice accretion. The absolute maximum impacts likely Burleson, northwest Brazos, west Madison counties, where we're the coldest with the heaviest precipitation potentially. There is a winter weather advisory issued for counties more on the fringe. For these counties, we'll be hovering right around freezing with light precipitation through tomorrow morning. And again, impacts there will depend on exactly where that temperature ends up being. Main impacts, icy patches on elevated surfaces, especially in the Warren area, but even potential for that in the advisory area, of course, will be temperature dependent. If we're 33 with rain, no issues. If we get down to 31, or 32, we might see some ice begin to accrete. Confidence is medium overall. There is still some uncertainty in exactly where that freezing line will end up, and also where the band of heavier precipitation will occur. But the greatest likelihood of impacts are again for those northwest counties in the warning area.